Welcome back to the deep dive. Sometimes you come across a talk or an article that just gets you thinking, and that's what we're looking at today.
It really is.
Elder Jeffrey R. Holland's talk, Not as the World Giveth, from the April 2021 General Conference.
Yeah, this talk really resonated with a lot of people.
Absolutely.
I think it's because he's speaking about finding peace in a world that honestly seems to be going out of its way to make it impossible.
It does, and I think Elder Holland really kind of took a snapshot of all that chaos swirling around us and said, okay, so here's how we navigate this using the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
He packed a lot into this talk, scripture, powerful imagery, and a real challenge to look inward.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to be exploring those big ideas of peace and conflict, but also really digging into what it means to be righteous in a world that often seems to reward anything but righteousness. And the big question of what can we actually do to make a difference?
Yeah, what can we do? He kind of jumps right in with this really poignant story about Christ offering peace to his disciples just hours before his crucifixion.
It's almost hard to comprehend, right?
It is.
Knowing what was about to happen, the betrayal, the agony, the crucifixion.
Yeah.
And yet Christ offers this peace that goes beyond all of that.
It does.
A peace that the world just couldn't understand.
The world couldn't even begin to understand it.
Right.
And I think what's so powerful is how Elder Holland connects that to our lives,
Right.
We all face challenges, even those of us that are striving to live faithfully. It's just part of being human.
Yeah.
But he offers us this very comforting idea. Christ's peace is a constant. It's a wellspring of strength that we can tap into no matter what's happening around us.
It is almost like this radical idea that peace is possible even in the midst of suffering.
Yeah.
But then he kind of takes this turn and brings in the Book of Mormon, which I honestly did not expect.
Interesting, right?
Yeah. And he talks about how much of the Book of Mormon is dedicated to conflict, these wars, battles, disagreements.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
Because I think it would be very easy to just kind of skim over those parts.
Right.
But Elder Holland suggests that all of this conflict is a deliberate warning for us.
For a Latter-day audience.
Yeah, for a Latter-day audience. Almost like he's saying, hey, look, this pattern of conflict, this is not new. And if you think you're immune to it, think again.
So is he talking about like traditional warfare here?
Well,
Because honestly, it kind of feels like we're in a different kind of conflict these days.
you're right.
Yeah.
He actually calls it a third world war, but not one that's fought with armies or weapons.
Right.
He describes it more as a battle for unity and healing among God's children.
So like the social and cultural clashes that we're seeing all around us.
Precisely.
Yeah, the political polarization.
Exactly.
And, he really doesn't mince words about the state of things.
He doesn't.
He compares society today to the Great Depression. Not in a financial sense,
Right.
but in this like widespread loss of self-confidence, faith, hope, and charity.
It's true.
It's a pretty sobering thought.
It is.
It makes you wonder, are we in a spiritual depression of sorts?
That is a provocative question.
It is.
But here's the thing. Elder Holland isn't just pointing out the problem. He's offering a solution. He's offering a way out of this darkness.
Okay, so what are these gospel tools that he's talking about?
Right.
How do they help us navigate this third world war and pull ourselves out of this spiritual depression?
Well, he emphasizes righteous living.
Oh.
That is the key. It's not just about passively believing. It's about actively aligning our lives with Christ's teachings. And that, he says, is how we tap into the powers of heaven. Divine help that can empower us to overcome the challenges that we face both individually and as society.
I love that phrase, the powers of heaven.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful reminder that we're not alone in this struggle and that there's a power greater than ourselves that we can access.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he gets very specific about what this righteous living looks like. He calls for virtues like patience, long-suffering, gentleness, love unfeigned.
Right.
Virtues that honestly seem increasingly rare in our world.
It's interesting, isn't it? He lays out these qualities that are so essential to building a peaceful world,
Yeah.
but they're qualities that we don't always see celebrated or even valued in our modern culture.
It's true.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid to call out those negative trends that he sees gaining ground, both in society as a whole and sometimes even within the church.
Oh.
He addresses things like coarse language, sexual transgression, harassment, abuse, unkindness, even something called unrighteous dominion.
Unrighteous dominion.
Yeah.
That's a phrase that might need a little unpacking for some people.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It's essentially about improperly using power or authority to control or manipulate others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about using influence in a way that's harmful or disrespectful, rather than using it to uplift and empower. And sadly, this can happen anywhere, even within families and relationships that should be havens of peace and love.
He really takes a strong stand against domestic abuse.
He does.
Yeah.
He condemns it unequivocally,
Mm-hmm.
saying that those who engage in such behavior are unworthy to hold the priesthood or a temple recommend.
Wow.
And it's a really powerful statement because it highlights how seriously this issue is viewed and how incompatible it is with the very core of our beliefs.
Yeah.
And he goes even further to emphasize that everyone has a right to be loved, to feel peaceful, and to find safety at home.
That's such a powerful message.
It is.
That's such a critical reminder, especially in a world where violence and aggression often seem to be the norm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that peace starts in our homes,
Mm-hmm.
in our relationships,
Yeah.
in how we treat each other.
In those little things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where we can make a real difference. One act of kindness,
Right.
one choice for peace at a time.
So it feels like we're standing at this crossroads. We have this bleak picture of a world that's consumed by conflict and negativity, but we also have this invitation, this promise of peace that Christ offers.
That's right.
So where do we go from here?
Wow.
How do we actually navigate this world and cultivate peace in our own lives and in the lives of those around us?
Yeah, that's a big question.
It is.
A really big question.
It is.
The $1 million question. I think Elder Holland would say. The answer lies in becoming peacemakers ourselves.
Okay.
You know, he talks about this promise that those who work to embody those principles of righteousness, those who work to bring peace into their lives and into the lives of other people,
Right.
they receive the Holy Ghost as a constant companion.
That's an incredible thought.
Yeah.
It's like peace isn't just this absence of conflict,
right.
but it's an active force that we can invite into our lives.
That's exactly right. And it's not even something we have to like earn or force.
Right.
He uses this phrase, without compulsories means forever. It suggests that true peace, it comes from aligning ourselves with Christ's teachings, allowing those principles of righteousness to kind of shape our thoughts and our words and actions.
It's like a really powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
It's not about imposing our will on others or forcing them to conform.
Right.
But it's about like radiating peace outward from within ourselves.
Exactly.
And it all kind of ties back to Easter,
Yeah.
which I think is so appropriate given the timing of this talk.
It's brilliant how he uses Easter as this metaphor.
Yeah.
He explains that it represents a time for the principles of the gospel to pass over all of the negativity and hardship, ultimately leading to victory over death itself.
It's about rising above the darkness and embracing the light,
Yes.
the hope, the peace that Christ offers.
Exactly.
There's so much symbolism there.
Absolutely.
Letting go of those things that kind of weigh us down, grudges and resentments and fears,
Yeah.
and allowing ourselves to be transformed by the power of Christ's atonement.
And speaking of the atonement,
Yes.
that's where Elder Holland really drives home his message of hope and resilience. He reminds us that no matter how dark things might seem, Christ offers peace that transcends worldly understanding.
Right.
He urges us to not be troubled or afraid, even in the face of all the challenges we see.
Like he's saying, look, the world might be a mess, but you don't have to let that mess define you.
Right.
Yeah, you can choose peace even when it seems impossible.
Yeah,
Choose hope even when you're surrounded by despair.
exactly. And he's not offering some pie-in-the-sky, unrealistic version of peace here.
Right.
He acknowledges the challenges, he calls out the darkness, but he also shines a light on the path forward. He shows us that there's a way to navigate these really turbulent times, a way to find peace amidst the storm.
And it all starts with those small, seemingly insignificant acts of peacemaking that we talked about earlier.
That's right.
So let's bring this down to earth a little bit.
Okay.
What does this look like in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah.
How do we actually apply these teachings in a practical way? Because it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the enormity of the problems that we face.
I agree.
both in the world and even in our own personal lives.
That's true, but that's where I think Elder Holland's message is so empowering. You know, he's not asking us to solve all the world's problems single-handedly.
Right.
He's just asking us to focus on what we can control.
Right. Our own thoughts, our own words, our own actions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Being intentional with our interactions with other people. Choosing peace over conflict whenever possible.
And he leaves us with this really powerful question. What small act of peacemaking can you commit to this week, both for yourself and for those around you?
That is a good question.
It's like a challenge to step back and examine our lives and see where we could be instruments of peace, even in the smallest of ways.
And what really resonates with me is that it doesn't have to be this grand gesture.
Right.
It could be as simple as offering a listening ear to someone who's struggling, extending forgiveness to someone who's wronged us, or speaking up against injustice when we see it.
Or even choosing kind words over harsh ones.
Yes.
Practicing patience
Yeah.
instead of anger.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Creating a more peaceful environment in our own homes.
These little things might seem insignificant on their own,
I know.
but when you multiply them across countless individuals, they have this ripple effect.
Yeah.
They can actually shift the energy of the world around us.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in building a better world, and even the smallest acts can make a difference.
Yeah.
Understanding that peace isn't something that happens to us.
Right.
It's something that we actively create.
And I love how he ties it all back to Christ,
Yes.
reminding us that this peace that we're striving for, this peace that the world can't give, is rooted in our relationship with him.
Right.
It's about aligning ourselves with his teachings,
Yeah.
drawing on the power of his atonement,
Exactly.
and striving to live as he lived.
It's a powerful message, isn't it?
Yeah.
A message of hope and resilience in a world that often feels hopeless and divided. It's a reminder that even in the midst of all this darkness, light can prevail.
Yeah.
And it's a call to action. An invitation to become peacemakers in our own lives and in the world around us.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
Imagine what the world would look like if we all committed to being peacemakers. What if we all chose to respond to conflict with understanding instead of anger,
Right.
forgiveness instead of resentment,
Right.
love instead of hate?
It's a beautiful thought.
What kind of world would we create?
A beautiful vision, right? A world transformed by peace. And, you know, it might seem like an impossible dream,
Yeah.
but I really think Elder Holland would say that it's a dream worth striving for.
It is.
It's a dream that starts with each of us, with those small, everyday choices that we make to be peacemakers.
He really is painting this picture of what's possible.
He is.
It's not just for individuals,
Right.
but for society as a whole.
Yeah, it's not about erasing our differences or pretending that conflict doesn't exist.
Right.
It's about choosing to approach those differences with understanding and compassion and a genuine desire to find common ground.
It kind of reminds me of that quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world."
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in complaining about the state of things, but Elder Holland is really challenging us to be proactive,
He is.
to be the peace that we want to see.
And he reminds us that this isn't some near untested philosophy.
Yeah.
He's grounding this call to action in the teachings of Christ, the power of the atonement.
Yeah.
He's saying, look, this has been done before. Christ showed us the way.
He did.
He overcame the world. And through him, we can too.
That brings us back to the title of the talk, Not as the World Giveth.
Yeah.
It's like a powerful statement.
It is.
The world might offer us temporary solutions, these fleeting moments of peace.
Right.
But that deep, abiding peace that Elder Holland's talking about, that comes from a different source.
Exactly. It comes from aligning ourselves with Christ, drawing upon the power of his atonement and striving to live as he lived.
It's a peace that transcends understanding.
It does.
A peace that sustains us through challenges.
Yes.
A peace that we can build one small act of kindness at a time.
One small act at a time.
And, you know, think about that ripple effect we were talking about earlier.
I know.
Imagine if each of us, inspired by this message, committed to just one act of peacemaking this week.
That would be amazing.
What if we chose to respond to someone with patience instead of snapping at them?
Yeah.
What if we forgave someone who hurt us? What if we reached out to someone who's lonely?
Yeah.
Those small acts might seem insignificant on their own,
Right.
but multiply it across millions of people.
I know.
They could really start to shift the energy of the world.
It's about recognizing that we're not just passive recipients of peace. We're active participants in creating it.
We are.
And it all starts with a choice.
It does.
A choice to be a peacemaker, a choice to embody those Christ-like attributes of love, compassion, and forgiveness.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Elder Holland's really powerful message,
Yeah.
we want to leave you with this invitation. Don't just listen to this and move on.
Right.
Let it sink in.
Yeah.
Let it challenge you. And then most importantly, let it inspire you to action.
Yes.
What will your act of peacemaking be this week?
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
We hope you found something here to inspire you, to challenge you, and to empower you to be a force for peace in your own life and in the world around you.
And remember, even in a world filled with conflict and challenges, the peace of Christ is always available to us.
It is.
We just have to choose to embrace it.
Absolutely.
Good.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.